Welcome back to another explainer. I am so pumped to have you here today. If you're someone who loves focused, structured learning, you are in exactly the right spot. So today, we're unpacking a truly incredible, authentically recorded historical event. It comes straight from Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, literally the two most authentic collections of prophetic traditions in Islam. We're looking at the story of Jureij, and let me tell you, it is packed with intense moral dilemmas, unbelievable tension, and a climax that you just have to hear to believe.
Okay, let's jump right in. I want you to imagine a scenario for a second. Picture this high-stakes, incredibly public trial. The tension is just through the roof. You've got this furious crowd, and the accused person's life is literally hanging by a thread. Now imagine the ultimate, impossible star witness is brought forward to testify. A newborn baby. Like, what if that infant suddenly just started talking, exposing the absolute truth right there in front of an entire hostile crowd?
I know. It sounds completely made up, like something out of a fantasy novel. But here's the thing. This actually happened. We are looking at a true story, a factual account shared by the Prophet ﷺ himself with his companions. It's this profound piece of history that's been preserved for centuries, and today we're going to break down exactly how and why this miraculous event went down.
To really understand the miracle, we first kind of have to understand the man behind it. The story starts with a highly righteous man named Jureij, and according to the texts, Jureij wasn't just your casual, everyday worshiper, he was intensely devoted. He spent the vast majority of his time engaged in voluntary worship, totally in seclusion. He had built this life of peace, isolation, and uninterrupted dedication, just completely far removed from all the daily drama of town life.
But then, one day, right in the middle of his deep, focused prayer, his mother comes up to his place of seclusion and calls out to him. And boom, here is this intense, internal moral dilemma. In his faith, answering your mother is an absolute obligatory duty. But he was currently in the middle of voluntary prayer, so what do? Should he break his prayer, or should he just ignore her call to finish his worship?
The source material actually gives us a really clear picture of how this escalates. His mother calls out. Jureij makes a split-second choice, and he decides to just keep praying. But it doesn't stop there. His mother calls again. And again, it turns into this repeated, persistent plea for his attention. But Jureij, he remains completely silent, sticking strictly to his prayer. And you can imagine, this repeated, unanswered call just cranks the tension all the way up, pushing his mother to a critical breaking point.
Feeling entirely ignored and just deeply hurt, his mother gets incredibly upset. And in that raw state of frustration, she actually utters a very specific, very powerful supplication, a dua against her own son. She says, "O Allah, do not let him die until he sees the faces of immoral women." It's just one emotionally charged sentence, but it perfectly sets up the exact conflict that is about to just completely upend Jureij's peaceful life.
And sure enough, soon after, the weight of that mother's prayer actually takes effect. The peaceful seclusion our protagonist built, it's completely shattered. We shift into a much darker chapter of the story here. A wicked woman in the area catches wind of Jureij's pristine reputation and his secluded lifestyle, and she literally makes it her personal mission to tempt him and ruin his righteousness.
Watch how fast this spirals out of control. First, the woman tries to tempt Jureij, but he shuts it down. He steadfastly refuses her. His integrity completely holds up. But she doesn't just let it go. When her temptation fails, she goes off and commits a sin with the local shepherd instead. Fast forward months later, she gives birth to a child from that sin. But right at the moment of birth, she decides it's time for revenge. She blatantly lies to the townspeople, claiming this child belongs to Jureij. And the result? An immediate, full-blown angry mob attack. Just put yourself in Jureij's shoes for a second. Imagine the sheer terror of this situation. The townspeople are absolutely furious. Because his reputation was so flawless before, this perceived fall from grace feels 1,000 times worse to them. They march straight up to his seclusion, completely destroy his place of worship, and literally physically drag him out into the town. An entire community, everyone he knows, just blindly believes this fabricated rumor without a single second thought.
But right here is where Jureij's true character really shines. He is surrounded by a violent, screamy mob that just destroyed his sanctuary. But he doesn't panic. He doesn't scream back. He shows this remarkable, almost unbelievable calm and absolute reliance on his faith. Amidst all that chaos, Jureij simply and calmly asks one single question: where is the child?
So, the baby is brought before him. And honestly, from the perspective of the cynical crowd, they just laughed. I mean, it was absurd. They think they have this guy dead to rights, caught in a massive scandal, and he wants to look at the newborn? Think about how crazy that sounds, expecting an infant, someone who can't even hold its own head up, to offer a legal defense? The crowd literally thought he had lost his mind.
But what the crowd didn't realize was that Jureij wasn't relying on the baby's natural abilities at all. He was relying on the creator of that baby. We are now at the absolute precipice of the miraculous truth. This is the exact moment where natural laws are completely suspended by divine will.
Let's look really closely at how Jureij handles this impossible situation. First, he prays to Allah. Notice he doesn't try to argue with the crowd first, he immediately turns to God, because he knows exactly where true power lies. After praying, he physically points directly at the infant, and then he asks the baby a direct question: "Who is your father?"
And then, by the permission of Allah, the impossible actually happens. This newborn baby opens its mouth and speaks with absolute clarity. The baby says, "My father is the shepherd." Boom! The truth is instantly and undeniably exposed. It wasn't some long, drawn-out legal defense. It was an absolute, miraculous testimony from the very child that was being used as a weapon against him.
The immediate aftermath was staggering. The crowd, who just seconds before had been laughing and physically dragging this man through the dirt, was shocked into absolute dead silence. The truth was out there instantly. Jureij was decisively proven innocent, and this crushing weight of shame just immediately fell onto the mob that had been so quick to believe a totally fabricated rumor.
And this part brilliantly illustrates the massive difference between worldly guilt and spiritual humility. The townspeople are just overwhelmed with shame, right? They're begging Jureij for forgiveness. And to make up for destroying his sanctuary, they actually offer to rebuild his place of worship out of solid gold. But look at what Jureij asks for. He completely turns down the luxury. He just asks them to rebuild it simply out of mud and earth, exactly the way it was before.
Now, why on earth would he turn down solid gold? Because his ultimate goal was Allah's pleasure. It wasn't fame, it wasn't worldly wealth. This incredibly dramatic incident, the crazy false accusation, the very real threat to his life, none of it changed who he was. He remained totally steadfast, unshakable, and just completely detached from those superficial rewards the town was trying to throw at him.
So what does this all mean for us? We live in a world where rumors and false accusations can literally destroy a reputation in hours. A lie can spread like wildfire, infecting an entire community. But we've got to remember the ultimate power of truth. As we saw with that miraculous testimony of the infant, Allah can expose the truth in a single, undeniable moment.
Which brings us to our final takeaway for this explainer, and it's something I really want you to chew on today. Trust Allah, even when everyone is against you. Jureij stood completely alone against an entire furious town, armed with literally nothing but his faith and his innocence. And that was enough. When you face unfair accusations, when the crowd is laughing at you, remember the man whose quiet trust was answered by a speaking infant. Stay steadfast, keep your intentions pure, and truth will always prevail. So ask yourself, if the entire world turned against you tomorrow based on a lie, would your private faith be strong enough to weather the storm? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.